guys, what's up and welcome back to another Co's Daily Brew. Today we're going to be talking about who are you really, and this has been completely and 100% inspired by the book that I'm reading right now. It's called The Untethered Soul. We've talked about it already a few times, but just in general, this book prompted a little project that I did in my own life, and I figured I would talk about it with you guys, and maybe one of you guys would want to do the same project and just see what your results end up being. But it ultimately really led me to seeing, I guess, not necessarily who I am really, but who I've been living with, I guess, inside my mind. That sounds very crazy. Allow me to elaborate. There's a whole chapter at the beginning of the book, The Untethered Soul, that talks about your inner roommate. And I was at the airport actually when I read this chapter, and it really got me thinking. And I decided that for 24 hours, I was just going to make note, almost like an observer, of the things that my brain would think. So I took that 24 hours and I was just very aware of the little mixtape that's going on inside my mind that was constantly just, I guess, reiterating back to me what I was seeing, what I was experiencing, what I was feeling, whatever emotions I had, how tired I was, what food I should eat, even just like what someone meant when they said something to me, or, you know, just little tiny things like that. Just every little thing that we don't even really notice that our brains kind of do that our brains are constantly feeding us the information because we've gone out of observer mode and gone into almost like a listener mode. And the book basically describes it as almost like we're in this house with a roommate, and the roommate is our conscious brain that's constantly trying to make sense of everything. And it's trying to put it into a term or into words or into labels of good and bad so that it makes us feel more safe. It makes us feel like we can make better sense of it all. Otherwise, we're just kind of experiencing things, right? And so who we are to our core is actually the observer. We are observers, we are witnesses of our lives and our experiences. We are deeply seated inside of our bodies. We are deeply seated inside of our souls, and I definitely believe that. And I think that I definitely unknowingly got caught up in my roommate, and I tend to get caught up in my roommate quite often, you know, that little voice inside my mind that's constantly just labeling and telling me how everything is, but that actually isn't how it is. It's just how my brain wants to label it so I'm able to comprehend it. And so for that 24 hours, I took that time to really be aware of what I was thinking. And anytime I noticed it, instead of being upset or happy by what I was thinking, I just used it as a trigger. It was like as soon as I noticed myself thinking too much, I would instantly just write down in my journal exactly what I was thinking. And at the end of the 24 hours, I was able to look over all of the things that I'm constantly saying to myself inside my head, and it was very awakening. It was awakening in the sense that I, for one, noticed how negative or pessimistic or defeated a lot of the times that my thoughts like to go or be, you know what I mean? Whenever I would notice that I would forget something, or if I was like off my A game for something, or if it just something just didn't go how I expected it, it was almost like anytime that happened, anything I wrote after that, that was like whatever my brain was labeling the situation as, it was labeling it all as very defeated, all as very pessimistic. This is always what happens, or, you know, you can't figure it out, or I'm so blah, 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 like insert poor adjectives here. Basically what I'm getting at here is it brought me a very great sense of who I've been versus who I really am. And I think that if we all just take 24 hours to really listen to our inner roommate, it will give us all really good insight as to where we're at, because who we are is automatically, at least to the outside world, who we present ourselves as. And a lot of the times we get so caught up into listening to our brains and listening to what our mind has to say about everything that we actually do show up in the world as that version of ourselves. We show up in the world very pessimistic or defeated, or, you know, we start to let that energy seep outwards outside of our brains, and it goes into our tongue. We start talking the same way that our brains think. We start acting through the behaviors that come from the fears that we're telling ourselves inside of our minds, versus just being the observer, the witnesser, the experiencer that is open to all things and is instead kind of allowing the world to shape and form in front of us, and us to just be curious about it and be like, interesting, what can I do with this, rather than how is this going wrong, you know? And I'm not saying that all the thoughts that went through my mind when I was hanging out with my inner roommate that day were necessarily bad. There was also times that I'd be like, that's an interesting duck. Like literally, it was just so interesting to see what my brain gets caught up in or caught on, and then what that thought or what that experience was processing in terms of my thoughts. And so who are you really? I am challenging you guys. Maybe you'll do it today if you're watching this in the morning with your morning beverage, or maybe, you know, you want to do it for the week, or maybe you've already done this before, but take a good chunk of time and just be aware of your thoughts. Be aware of the things that you are constantly talking and saying to yourself inside your mind, because in a lot of ways, when you can become aware of it, it doesn't necessarily need to be a problem. And don't be afraid to, if you do suddenly become aware of it and you're like, oh my God, I am the most negative person in the world. We're all gonna feel that way, you know? I think that we're just kind of predisposed to thinking more negatively, or at least maybe that's what I've told myself, but I guess it's easier to be negative than it is to be positive. And so I think that if you notice that a lot of the things you do think and say to yourself are very negative, that is okay, because a lot of that comes from just like deeply rooted past experiences that lead us to believe that we can already figure out what's going to come of something before we're even able to check it out or let it happen, you know? So just become aware of your inner roommate, because then you're going to be able to see maybe how you've been filtering life, like the filter in which you've been putting on everything that's been coming at you, or the experiences that you've been living through and how you've been seeing them. Because the minute that you do that, the minute that you become aware of that little dialogue that you have going inside of your mind, you're then able to use it instead as a way of stopping yourself and then replacing it. Now, I did a whole daily brew on how to replace a bad habit with a good one, or how to change your habits. So I highly recommend, if you haven't watched that one, to maybe follow it up after this one, because it would be a good chance to, once you know your inner roommate, figure out how you can switch the dialogue so that your inner roommate becomes, you know, your best friend rather than your worst enemy. And aside from that, I am just curious, what is your inner dialogue right now? Just type it out down below. Don't filter it too much. If I were to tell you my inner dialogue right now, it would be that I'm staring at a camera and drinking a coffee, actually talking to nobody, and I'm about to go to the dentist, and I'm a little afraid about it because I just put off the dentist for so long, and now that I'm going, I'm already labeling it as bad. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be fine. I'm gonna sit back and relax, listen to some tunes with those really ugly dentist glasses on, and this is what I need to do with my life. See? I just became aware and I was able to flip it. I'm rambling, so I'm gonna let you guys go. I hope you guys all have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you guys all tomorrow morning. Bye, guys.